Welcome to episode 128 of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. I'm your host and fellow student, Michelle Nelson, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can better understand our options and build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. Last week, I took a week off to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary. We were married on 8/8/08. I just got back in town, but I wanted to give you at least a quick episode this week. This week's episode is inspired by one of my favorite resources for home building and design ideas and advice. Houzz. Houzz, spelled Houzz, is short for House Buzz. That site not only gives you access to thousands of inspiration photos, but also short blog posts and a helpful forum called Gardenweb. When I was looking through the Building a Home section of the forum, I saw a couple of valuable discussions that inspired this week's quick tips. One discussion having to do with the inclusion of a job site visitation policy in the contract, and one discussion regarding deleting items from the initial specifications list. I'll get to the quick tips in just a second, but before we go any further, I want to thank all of you who helped me to make it to over 100 ratings and reviews. Shouts out go to Be Saved, Mrs. Reno, and Dutchy Man, who wrote the most recent reviews. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to encourage me and to encourage others to listen to the podcast. Those ratings and reviews support the show because they let people know that you think the podcast is worth a listen. Thank all of you who helped me get to my goal. All right, let's get to the quick tips. Number 1. Make sure your contract allows you to make job site visits as often as you want. One homeowner on the Gardenweb forum wrote this: currently having a house built. Got a nasty signed letter last night from the builder saying that I have been seen on the site every evening and am in violation of the site visit policy. It said that this, quote, needs to stop or else things will escalate to the next level, end quote. So the question is, what's the next level? What can the builder do? Can he take all my deposit and option money and run, and I get no house? Or is there not much he can really do? Please advise. Thanks. So that was a question on the Gardenweb forum on Houzz. The answers on the forum varied. Some said that the builder was making empty threats and could legally do nothing to the homeowner. Others thought the builder could sue the homeowner for trespassing if the land was owned by the builder. The Building a Home subforum has a range of perspectives, since everyone from homeowners to designers to general contractors and architects regularly chime in. Many homeowners who have built houses in the past said they were surprised by the builder's reluctance to have the homeowner visit the job site. Those homeowners said that they visited their job sites in the past and the GCs had no problem at all with how often they came. Many people concluded that builders like to include a visitation restriction policy in their contracts to protect the homeowners from injury and to protect themselves from being held liable for any injuries that occur on the job site, since construction sites can be dangerous. But if you remember, builders must take out a liability insurance policy on each job, and that liability insurance will pay for injuries that occur on the construction site. So many people on the forum questioned whether liability was truly a valid concern of builders. Others on the forum said it's usually unscrupulous builders who want to restrict you from exploring the job site. Because they plan to cut corners and do subpar work, those unscrupulous builders are afraid that you will discover and take photos of that shoddy work, and they don't want you seeing and documenting bad work that will eventually be hidden behind sheet-rocked walls. So they want to limit your time on the job site. Okay, let's be real. The reasons that builders want to restrict your visitation probably varies from builder to builder. Sometimes they're looking out for your best interest, and sometimes they're looking out for their own best interest. And I'm not sure legally what right the builder has to keep you off the home site, especially if you own the land. But the best way to ensure that both you and your contractor are okay with your frequency of construction site visits is to specify your expectations. Make sure your contract either has no visitation restrictions or has restrictions that you can live with. For example, if you live close to the area where you're having your house built and you know you'll be visiting the job site almost every day, you don't want your contract to limit your visits to once a month. And if you feel strongly about being able to visit whenever you want, but your builder is hesitant to allow you because he says he doesn't want to be held liable for any injury that may occur, respectfully ask something like, wouldn't your liability insurance cover any injuries? Or you could agree to sign a visit at your own risk waiver that states that the contractor will not be held liable if you're injured on the job site. That sort of waiver should satisfy the contractor if his concern really is liability. Talk to your lawyer about the specifics of such a waiver. But if the builder insists on putting a very restrictive visitation policy in your contract and you feel uncomfortable with that, you may want to consider another contractor. You want to work with contractors who are reasonable and who want to protect you, but who are also open and honest about their work. If a contractor has a problem with you looking at and taking photos of his work, that's a red flag. He may not be doing anything wrong, but like Dr. Phil says, if you have nothing to hide, you should hide nothing. So make sure your contract has no visitation restrictions, or at least restrictions that are acceptable to you. Don't feel pressured to sign a contract that has a clause that makes you feel uncomfortable, whether it's a restrictive visitation clause or some other clause. It's okay to tweak contracts. Most people don't sign a contractor's contract as is. It's always best to get a lawyer to review your contracts, especially if you don't understand the language. Alternatively, you or your lawyer can draft your own contract and have the contractor sign it. That way you know the contract is acceptable to you. But remember, the contractor has a right to ask for changes to the contract that you've drafted, just like you have the right to ask for changes to a contract that the builder drafts. All right, so that was the first issue. There was another subject in the forum that I want to warn you about. Here's the situation. A homeowner looked through the builder's estimate and specifications. The homeowner decided he wanted to lower his overall cost of building by completely deleting many items on the specifications list. So I'm thinking he was talking about items like chandeliers, ceiling fans, extra sinks, and wall tile, things like that would be considered extras. So the builder deletes those items and the prices for those items from the estimate, but the builder did not delete his markups on those items. So even though the cost of the items came off of the overall estimate for the house, the amount that the builder added in markups stayed in the estimate and stayed the same. To be clear, if the builder deleted items, he should also delete the markups on those items. And as an aside, markups should be clearly stated in the estimate and not hidden in a lump sum amount. And you as homeowner need to agree to those markups. Remember, I've told you in previous episodes that most builders not only get a builder's fee, but they also mark up products and materials that they purchase for their home, plus they mark up labor. Average markups range from 10 to 30%, but sometimes they're even more. If you don't want to pay markups on labor and materials, you'll have to negotiate that with the builder, but it's really industry standard, so you may have trouble with that negotiation. The other option is that you could become an owner builder. Unfortunately, the homeowner who started this discussion on the forum agreed to pay those extra markups by signing off on a contract that included that inflated cost. He hadn't scrutinized the numbers until after he signed the contract. It was only after he agreed to the terms of the contract that he realized the markups on the deleted materials were still in the price of the house. That was obviously bad news for the homeowner. But here's what we can learn from the situation. First, read the entire contract, including itemized costs, before you sign the contract. Tell the contractor you need to take it home and review it, or have your lawyer review it before signing. Don't feel pressured to sign a contract the day you get it. And secondly, If you've agreed to allow your builder to mark up materials and labor, make sure you delete markups on any deleted products and materials, and inquire about decreases in labor costs if you've deleted a significant number of items from your estimate. If labor costs decrease, so should markups on labor. So those are our quick tips this week. Number 1, be careful of job site visitation restrictions in your contract. And number 2, make sure you delete any builder's markups on all items you delete from your specifications. Well, that's all I have for you this week. I hope you learned a couple of things, and I hope you'll join me next week for another episode of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It's not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, it's subject to change, and it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home.